John, a dedicated family man in his mid-30s, had thought he'd found his forever soulmate when he married the lovely Sarah over 9 years ago. From the moment their eyes first met, an unbreakable connection had sparked between them, leading to a whirlwind romance and fairy tale wedding. They built a picturesque life in the suburbs, their cozy home filled with the joyful chaos of two rambunctious young children, a boy and girl with their mother's soulful eyes and their father's easy grin. John's career in software engineering was thriving, the long hours and complex projects rewarded with a hefty salary that provided a comfortable life for his family. The only downside was the somewhat unpredictable schedule. He worked in a rotation of 2 months straight, followed by a month off to recharge. It wasn't ideal to be away from Sarah and the kids for such long stretches, but they made the best of it, staying connected through nightly video chats and lavish family vacations during his breaks. Sarah had been just 22 when they married, a wide-eyed innocent with a heart of gold. She'd saved herself for marriage, an old-fashioned choice in this modern age, but one that made their wedding night all the more special and sacred. In John's extensive dating history, he'd never met someone so genuine, so pure of heart and generous of spirit. Even after nearly a decade together, his heart still swelled with love and gratitude every time he looked at his beautiful bride. With John gone so often for work, he was glad Sarah had a tight-knit group of friends to keep her from feeling isolated. He never begrudged her girls' nights out or boozy brunches, even when he couldn't join. Sarah was no party animal, but she could get giggly and gregarious when she let herself enjoy a few too many cocktails. John chuckled to himself, remembering some of her tipsy antics, like the time she got the whole bar singing a rousing rendition of Sweet Caroline during karaoke night. Sure, like any couple, they had their share of tiffs and disagreements, but John and Sarah prided themselves on always fighting fair and never going to bed angry. They were a team forever and always, through thick and thin. Their intense chemistry hadn't waned over the years either. They still couldn't keep their hands off each other, making love with as much passion as giddy newlyweds. John knew how lucky he was to have found his perfect match. So when John wearily trudged through the front door just past midnight after a grueling day of travel last week, he didn't think much of Sarah's absence. He knew she'd been at a company happy hour the evening before, and figured she was probably still out painting the town red with their work crew. Sarah's parents had the kids for the weekend to give her a mini break, so the house was still and sound, a welcome respite. John peeled off his rumpled suit and stepped into a steaming hot shower, letting the pulsing spray blast away the grime of airports and taxis. Clean and content, he slipped into bed wearing just his boxers, figuring Sarah would wake him up in a frisky mood when she tiptoed in later. The alarm clock blinked 1:07 a.m. when his heavy lids drooped shut. A loud thud startled John awake some interminable time later. He blinked groggily at the clock. 5:26 a.m. Much later than he expected Sarah to roll in, even with the bars closing at 2 a.m. Pulse quickening with unease, he sat up just as she staggered into their bedroom. In the weak glow of the nightlight, he could see her makeup was smeared, hair mussed, eyes glassy and red-rimmed. "Baby, you okay?" he asked, voice raspy with sleep and concern. Sarah took one look at him and crumpled, falling to her knees by the bed as harsh sobs racked her slight frame. Through hitching breaths and a flood of tears, a horrific tale spilled out. She'd been bar-hopping downtown with their work friends, including John's longtime buddy, Ethan. Everyone was in high spirits, buying rounds and dancing on tabletops. Sarah threw back drink after drink until the room was spinning and she could barely stand. Thoroughly wasted, she begged Ethan to take her home around midnight. They stumbled out to the curb together, Sarah hanging off his arm for balance. The biting autumn wind made her stomach churn and vision blur. She doubled over and dry-heaved, shoulders shaking. Ethan hailed a cab, but instead of giving the driver their address, he directed him to his own apartment just a block away. Up in Ethan's bachelor pad, Sarah rushed to the toilet and violently emptied the contents of her stomach, over and over until only bile came up. Feeling weak and woozy, she rinsed her mouth and shuffled into the living room. Ethan patted the couch next to where he sat, an explicit adult film playing on the big screen TV. In her addled state, Sarah plopped down beside him without a second thought. They watched the on-screen lovers writhe and moan, an awkward tension thickening the air. Ethan scooted closer, his thigh brushing hers. Their small talk took on a more suggestive, intimate tone. And then his hand was sliding up her leg, under her skirt, and she wasn't stopping him. Her head lolled back drunkenly as he nuzzled her neck. Through the fog of alcohol, they pawed at each other, all roaming hands and sloppy kisses. Clothing fell away as they stumbled to Ethan's bedroom, a tangle of naked limbs crashing onto the mattress. Sarah swore it happened in a dreamlike trance, that she didn't even feel physical pleasure in the moment, just a surreal sense of floating outside her body, while Ethan grunted and thrust above her. She insisted she had no romantic feelings for him whatsoever, that the sex meant nothing. But it happened all the same. John listened to this unbelievable confession, blood running cold with shock and betrayal. It was like a cruel cosmic joke. Ethan, his supposed best friend, a brother in all but blood, had seized the chance to take advantage of Sarah when she was fall-down drunk and defenseless. Fury roared in his veins. He wanted to wrap his hands around Ethan's throat and squeeze until the lying bastard turned blue. And Sarah, his precious wife, the mother of his children, had shattered their vows with this unforgivable indiscretion. A voice in his head screamed at him to throw her shameful ass out the door and let the wolves descend. She made her bed with Ethan, so let her lie in it. But his bruised and battered heart still loved her, even now. It was almost worse that she felt no real attraction to Ethan, that she threw it all away for a meaningless, alcohol-addled fuck. John feels as if he's been cleaved in two, half of him burning with righteous wrath, the other drowning in despair. He wants to rage and break things, wants to crumple into a ball and weep for the dream that just died, tainted forever by this unforgivable betrayal. Sarah keeps repeating how sorry she is, how it was just a terrible drunken error in judgment, that it will never happen again. But how can he possibly trust her now? Every time she goes out, he'll wonder if she's climbing into someone else's bed. Every time she mentions Ethan's name in passing, he'll picture the two of them twined together, skin to skin. And yet walking away isn't so simple. Their two precious children worship their mother. They need Sarah's nurturing presence, her lullabies and bedtime stories. Depriving them of her love, even part-time, feels cruel. Perhaps he can find a way to forgive, to rebuild what's been broken. But he has no earthly idea where to start. John feels paralyzed by indecision, gutted by pain and doubt. He tells Sarah to sleep in the guest room tonight while he sorts through the wreckage of his thoughts. Lying in their marital bed alone, the scent of her floral shampoo still lingering on her pillow. All he can do is stare blankly at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, replaying the gut-wrenching details of Sarah's story and desperately wondering how they ended up here, when just yesterday he thought he had it all. Sleep eludes him as a haunting question echoes in his mind. Where do we go from here?